On today's episode, we're going to continue exploring the Jeffrey Epstein court documents, and this time we're taking a look at the lawsuit that Epstein survivor Tila Davies filed against Jeffrey Epstein and the estate. Case number ST-19-PB-80. Action for probate. In the matter of the estate of Jeffrey E. Epstein. Claim. The undersigned, Marianne Meyer Wang, Esquire, of Cuddy Hecker Wang, LLP, Richard P. Bourne Vanek, Esquire, and Allred, Morocco and Goldberg, hereby present and file this claim on behalf of Tila Davies, the claimant, for unliquidated and unsecured damages from the estate of Jeffrey E. Epstein, the estate, in the above captioned matter, now pending before court, and in support thereof state as follows. 1. Jeffrey Edward Epstein was arrested in New York City, New York, on July 6, 2019, and held in custody on sex trafficking charges following a series of investigations into his activities prior thereto. Number 2. Claimant is one of a number of underage victims of decedent's criminal actions. 3. Decedent, upon information and belief, conspired with multiple individuals, including attorneys and advisors, to fraudulently convey and hide assets from his victims, including claimant, by transferring assets into a newly titled trust through the provisions of a contemporaneously drafted last will and testament on or about August 8, 2019. 4. On November 21, 2019, claimant filed a civil action in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, seeking damages against the estate. A true and correct copy of the complaint, so filed, and indexed as case number 119CV-10788, is attached here too as Exhibit A. 5. Pursuant to New York Child's Victims Act, among other bases, claimant's civil action in New York was commenced timely. 6. Decedent committed sexual abuse, included repeated sexual assault and forcible rape upon claimant on multiple occasions. 7. The petition for probate of the decedent's estate lists personal and real property valued at $577,672,654. 8. Claimant's claim, as determined in a final judgment in the matter attached hereto as Exhibit A, including compensatory damages, punitive damages, costs, interest and fees, is rightfully entitled to payment, whether or not the claim has been reduced to judgment, liquidated, fixed, or matured, and has an equitable lien on all unencumbered assets and property of the estate. This was signed by Marianne Meyer Wang. The next document we have is the complaint and the jury demand. Case number 19, Civ.10788. Tila Davies, plaintiff, versus Darren K. Indyke and Richard D. Kahn as executors of the estate of Jeffrey E. Epstein. Plaintiff Tila Davies, by and through her attorneys, Cuddy Hecker Wang, LLP, and Allred, Morocco, and Goldberg, for her complaint alleges as follows. Nature of action. 1. When plaintiff Tila Davies was just 17 years old, living on her own, and working full-time to support herself, Jeffrey Epstein preyed upon her, manipulated her to be completely dependent on him, and sexually abused her. 2. Epstein was presented to Tila as someone who had learned about her challenging circumstances and had the resources and interest to assist her, including by helping her to attend college and study abroad to see the world. Tila was introduced to Epstein by her sister, but Tila was unaware that Epstein had been manipulating and sexually abusing her sister, as Epstein's total power and control over Tila's sister made it impossible for her to say anything about it. 3. During their early interactions, Epstein led Tila to believe that he would help her achieve her dream of becoming a translator, and he arranged for Tila to study abroad in Spain. Tila gave up her job and her apartment in anticipation of this life-changing opportunity, leaving her completely dependent on Epstein and his continuing generosity. 4. Epstein exploited this power over 17-year-old Tila to sexually abuse her repeatedly. Ultimately, he raped her and sexually assaulted her frequently in a variety of places and settings, including by trafficking Tila to his homes in New York, New Mexico, Florida, the Virgin Islands, and France. He treated her like an object for his sexual gratification. 5. These assaults caused Tila to feel completely intimidated and fearful. She froze up and began to cry, able to think only about trying to survive. 6. Epstein continued to exert total control over Tila's life for 2 more years, trafficking her around the country and the world and sexually abusing her on frequent basis. During this time, Tila felt deep despair and isolation and developed a severe and self-destructive eating disorder. Still, within his power and control, Tila confided in Epstein about her disorder, mistakenly believing that she could trust him. Rather than help her, Epstein cast her out within hours of her admission, sending her back to a place where she no longer had a home, a job, or any resources of support. 7. Epstein's abuse destroyed Miss Davies' life. She sank into alcoholism and other self-harm, unable to trust others but not understanding why. 8. At the same time, like so many childhood sex abuse victims, she did not comprehend how it had undone her or her life or how it had impacted her. 9. Now a working mother of 3, Ms. Davies is still just beginning to understand the depth of those injuries from the sexual assaults that Epstein inflicted on her beginning when she was 17. She still feels the toll of Epstein's abuse every day. She feels dysfunctional, on edge, overwhelmed, and like she is on the verge of a psychological breakdown. She has difficulty sleeping and often has flashbacks to Epstein's abuse. 10. Epstein died in August of 2019 before Ms. Davies or the countless other girls he preyed upon could obtain a modicum of justice. Number 11. Ms. Davies brings this action seeking, at last, some remedy for the egregious abuse that Epstein inflicted when she was still a child. Parties. 12. Plaintiff Tila Davies is an individual who resides in Arizona. 13. Defendants Darren K. Indike and Richard D. Kahn are the executors of the estate of Jeffrey E. Epstein, the estate. As executors of the estate, defendants are liable for the acts and omissions of Epstein and his agents. For purposes of U.S. Code 28, Section 1332, defendants Indike and Kahn are deemed to be citizens of the United States Virgin Islands, where Epstein was domiciled at the time of his death. Jurisdiction and venue. 14. This court has subject matter jurisdiction pursuant to U.S. Code 28, Section 1332, because the case is between citizens of different states and the amount in controversy exceeds $75,000. 15. Venue is proper in this district pursuant to U.S. Code 28, Section 1391, B and 2, because a substantial part of the events or omissions giving rise to the claim occurred in this district. 16. This court has personal jurisdiction over defendants as executors of the estate. Defendants Indike and Kahn are subject to personal jurisdiction in this court because Epstein was subject to personal jurisdiction at the time of his death. 17. This court had both specific and general personal jurisdiction over Epstein at the time of his death. 18. Epstein resided in New York State a substantial portion of the time during the time period at issue in this lawsuit and through the time of his death. 19. Epstein resided in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York County at the time of his death. 20. Epstein conducted substantial business operations in New York. 21. Epstein owned and/or controlled numerous companies with principal places of business in New York. 22. Epstein owned substantial real property assets in New York, including townhouse located at 9th East 71st Street in Manhattan, which is valued at $55 million or more. 23. New York was the epicenter of Epstein's criminal sex trafficking enterprise. For years, Epstein and his agents took action in New York in order to arrange for minor girls to be trafficked to his homes throughout the country in order to perform sexual acts for him. Epstein's trafficking and abuse of Miss Davies was part of that New York-based criminal enterprise. 24. From his Manhattan townhouse, Epstein directed a vast network of agents in recruiting minor girls to be brought to him for his sexual use. 25. Epstein sexually abused many minor girls, including Miss Davies, in his Manhattan townhouse. 26. On many occasions, Epstein and his agents made phone calls from New York to schedule appointments for minor girls to come to Epstein's residences outside of New York in order to perform commercial sex acts for Epstein. 27. Upon information and belief, Epstein and/or his agents were present in New York when they took various actions to facilitate the trafficking of Miss Davies for the purpose of performing sexual acts for Epstein. Jury demand. 28. Plaintiff hereby demands a trial by jury on all of her claims in this action. Factual allegations. 29. When plaintiff Tila Davies was 17 years old, Jeffrey Epstein preyed upon her, manipulating her to be completely dependent on him, and then sexually assaulting and raping her on numerous occasions. Epstein continued this pattern of manipulation and frequent sexual assault for years, leaving Miss Davies with deep emotional wounds that she is still just beginning to grapple with. 30. By age 17, Tila had already lived through tremendously challenging circumstances. At 11 years old, she was homeless for a year, staying with various friends, and seeing her mother only about once a week. At 15, Tila began working in order to support herself. At 16, Tila's living situation was again unstable, and she moved to LA to live with her older sister. 31. Tila initially tried to go to school in Los Angeles, but was unable to continue due to the need to work full-time to support herself. Tila lived with her sister and worked at a hair salon, eventually getting her GED. By the time Tila met Epstein, she had already been living on her own and working full-time for a year and a half. 32. Tila's sister, who was 5 years older than her, had previously met Epstein and traveled with him. Tila's sister described Epstein as her generous, wealthy person and reported that he often helped her make it possible for people to attend college. Tila's sister reported that Epstein had heard Tila's story and had wanted to help. 33. Unbeknownst to Tila, Epstein had been manipulating and sexually abusing her sister. Tila had no idea that her sister had been involved in any type of sexual interactions with Epstein. Epstein's power and control of Tila's sister made it impossible for her to say anything. 34. Tila met Epstein for the first time in 2002. She was 17 years old. Epstein was visiting Los Angeles, and Tila drove with her sister to meet him at the Hotel Bel Air. 35. During that first meeting, Epstein lay on a bed in his spacious hotel suite, fully clothed. He asked Tila's sister to massage his feet, then encouraged Tila to join her. Afterwards, Epstein took them shopping and insisted on buying several items for Tila. 36. After that meeting, Epstein kept in touch with Tila through frequent phone calls. Epstein veered the conversation toward Tila's career goals, how Epstein could help her achieve them. He purported to want to help her and guide her to a better life. 37. Epstein offered to send Tila to school to learn hairdressing, but Tila made clear this was not what she wanted to do in the long term. Tila explained that she had a passion for languages and for people, and that her dream was to be a translator. 38. Epstein claimed that he wanted to help Tila study to become a translator. He suggested that he would pay for Tila to study in Spain for a semester. Soon after, Epstein helped her to obtain a letter of recommendation from high school and helped her get accepted to study at the University of Madrid. 39. Tila was over the moon, feeling her dreams were coming true. Epstein made sure she felt that it was all his doing. 40. Tila prepared for this exciting opportunity to study abroad and pursue her dream career. She gave notice at her hairdressing job and gave up her apartment in Los Angeles, preparing to move to Spain. 41. Before Tila left for her school program, however, Epstein began what would become a long pattern of using her as a sexual object. 42. In approximately the summer of 2002, Epstein flew Tila and her sister to his ranch in New Mexico. Tila felt no reason to be wary of Epstein. He had been kind in their first meeting and had acted with generosity towards her. 43. When Tila got to Epstein's ranch, Epstein's close associate Ghislaine Maxwell and Sarah Kellen were there. Maxwell asked Tila questions about herself and took her horseback riding. Kellen invited Tila to go swimming. 44. After Tila swam, Epstein asked her to go into the massage room along with Kellen. Kellen began massaging Epstein, and Tila innocently joined in, as she had when her sister massaged Epstein's feet for the first time. 45. At that point, Epstein began fondling Kellen and took off Kellen's shirt. Tila became very uncomfortable, as the massage had quickly and unexpectedly turned into a sexual encounter. Epstein reached inside Tila's bathing suit and fondled her genitals. Tila began crying, but Epstein continued to grope her as he masturbated to completion. 46. Tila felt extremely vulnerable. Epstein had arranged the circumstances to ensure that Tila was completely at his mercy. Tila had given up her job and her apartment in order to travel to Spain at Epstein's expense. If Epstein decided to rethink his generosity at any point, Tila would have had nothing and would have been left homeless and jobless once again after being brought so close to her dream. Even though Epstein had preyed upon her and sexually assaulted her, Tila understood she had no choice but to submit to him. His power over her was all-encompassing. 47. Epstein viciously exploited this power dynamic. In the summer and fall of 2002, he flew 17-year-old Tila to his home in New York, Florida, and then the U.S. Virgin Islands, sexually assaulting her in each of those locations. 48. In or around December 2002, Epstein flew Tila to stay at his townhouse located at 9 East 71st Street in Manhattan. While they were in the dining room of the townhouse, Epstein, without warning, stuck his hand down Tila's pants and fondled her genitals. It was as if she were his toy. 49. In or around the same month, at Epstein's home in Florida, Epstein crept into Tila's bedroom while she was sleeping and raped her. 50. Also around that same month, at the private island Epstein owned in the Virgin Islands, Epstein ordered Tila to massage him, then proceeded to sexually assault her in the massage room. 51. Tila finally traveled to Spain to study in or around the end of 2002. 52. In early 2003, when Tila was still 17 years old, Epstein flew her from Madrid to Paris. At his home in Paris, Epstein again crept into Tila's bedroom while she slept and raped her. 53. When Epstein inflicted these sexual assaults on Tila, she felt completely intimidated and fearful. All she could think about was trying to survive. Her body froze up, and she began crying. 54. After Tila's semester in Madrid, she had no home and no job. Instead, Epstein brought her to live a nomadic lifestyle in his close orbit. Tila traveled around the country with Epstein and his entourage, which generally included Maxwell, Kellen, and others. Virtually every few days, Epstein would bring Tila to a different home of his, including the Manhattan townhouse, and throughout the country, where he continued to sexually assault her on a frequent basis. Epstein regularly used his private planes to traffic Tila into various locations for his sexual abuse of her. 55. Epstein had power over every aspect of Tila's life, and he had groomed Tila to be completely dependent on him and completely submissive to him. Epstein treated Tila as a sexual object, using her body for his sexual gratification, frequently and at his whim. 56. Eventually, by approximately 2004, Epstein arranged for Tila to live at an apartment at 301 East 66th Street in Manhattan, just blocks from his townhouse when she was in New York. 57. This pattern of Epstein exercising total control over Tila's life and using her as a sexual object whenever he desired continued throughout 2003 and 2004. Epstein arranged for Tila to study abroad 2 more times, apparently when he grew bored with having her around. Each time, Tila lived in this nomadic orbit with Epstein, both before and after traveling to attend school. 58. Epstein also tried to introduce Tila to his friends and essentially offer her as a sexual object to them. In one instance, Epstein had Tila spend time with a well-known Hollywood producer who then demanded and attempted to engage in abusive sexual behavior. Tila barely escaped. 59. By 2004, Tila felt deep despair and isolation. There was no one she could talk to about what Epstein was doing to her. Instead, Epstein had ensured that she thought he was the only person in her life whom she could trust. 60. Tila developed a severe eating disorder for the first time in or around 2004. After she had struggled with the disorder for 6 months or a year, it became too much to bear. She confided in Epstein about her eating disorder, still manipulated into thinking he was someone she could trust. 61. Instead, from the moment Epstein learned of Tila's self-destructive behavior, he immediately cast her out. Literally within hours of Tila anxiously confessing to Epstein that she did not know why, but had a compulsive need to binge and purge, he threw her out. He instructed her to pack up her belongings and arrange for her to be flown to Arizona. 62. But there was nothing left in Arizona. She still had no idea what had happened to her and felt it was all her fault. 63. Epstein's abuse destroyed Tila's life. After being cast out by him, after 2 years of a lavish, if abusive, lifestyle, she sank into alcoholism and other self-harm, unable to trust others, but not understanding why. 64. Miss Davies is now a working mother raising 3 children. She's still struggling to put her life back together. 65. Miss Davies is still in the nascent stages of understanding the deep and lasting injuries that Epstein's pattern of abuse has caused her, but she feels the effects every day. She feels dysfunctional, on edge, and constantly overwhelmed. She has difficulty sleeping. She often has flashbacks to Epstein's sexual assaults. She feels like she's on the verge of a psychological breakdown. 66. This action is timely under the law of each jurisdiction whose law might be determined to govern Miss Davies' claims or aspects thereof, including without limitation, New York, New Mexico, Florida, and the Virgin Islands. 67. Ms. Davies still has not disclosed her abuse to a licensed medical or mental health care provider in the context of receiving health care from the provider. 68. Ms. Davies is still just beginning to process and understand the full extent of the injuries that Epstein's abuse has caused her and the connection between Epstein's abuse and the emotional and psychological injuries she had experienced. 69. This action is timely under New York law because it falls within New York CP LR 214-G and is brought during the 1-year time period set forth in that action. The claims brought herein allege intentional and negligent acts and/or omissions for physical, psychological, and other injuries suffered as a result of conduct that would constitute sexual offenses as defined in Article 130 of the New York Penal Law, and such acts and/or omissions were committed against Ms. Davies when she was less than 18 years of age. 70. Epstein's conduct constitutes childhood sexual abuse within the meaning of New Mexico Statute 37-1-30 and abuse with the meaning of Florida Statute Section 95.11(7). First cause of action, battery. 71. Plaintiff hereby incorporates each of the foregoing paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. 72. In committing the acts described above, Epstein intentionally subjected plaintiff to bodily contact that was offensive in nature. 73. Epstein intentionally touched plaintiff in a rude, insolent, or angry manner. 74. As a result of Epstein's actions, plaintiff suffered damages in an amount to be determined at trial. Second cause of action, assault. 75. Plaintiff hereby incorporates each of the foregoing paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. 76. In committing the acts described above, Epstein engaged in physical conduct that placed plaintiff in imminent apprehension that he would harm her. 77. As a result of Epstein's actions, plaintiff suffered damages in an amount to be determined at trial. Third cause of action, intentional infliction of emotional distress. 78. Plaintiff hereby incorporates each of the foregoing paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. 79. In committing the acts described above, Epstein engaged in extreme and outrageous conduct. 80. In doing so, Epstein acted with the intent to cause and/or disregard of a substantial likelihood of causing plaintiff to suffer severe emotional distress. 81. As a direct result of Epstein's actions, plaintiff suffered severe emotional distress. 82. As a result of Epstein's actions, plaintiff suffered damages in an amount to be determined at trial. Wherefore, plaintiff respectfully requests that judgment be entered against defendants as follows. A. Awarding compensatory damages for all physical injuries, emotional distress, psychological harm, anxiety, humiliation, physical and emotional pain and suffering, family and social disruption, and other harm in the amount to be determined at trial. B. Awarding punitive damages in an amount to be determined at trial. C. Awarding attorney's fees and costs pursuant to any applicable statute or law. D. Awarding pre- and post-judgment interest on all such damages, fees, and/or costs. E. Attaching all of defendant's real property and other assets located in the state of New York, pursuant to New York CPLR 6201 and Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 64, and F. Awarding such other and further relief as this court may deem just and proper. This document was signed by Marianne Meyer Wang.